Guys, welcome back to our channel. It's Yvonne from Ginger Chick Rehab. I'm so glad to have you checking out our channel again today. And if you are new here and checking out our channel for the first time, this is something I do with my husband, Chris. We take thrift store found items and we give them new life. We make over these unwanted, outdated, unloved, whatever have you items from a thrift store. And on our channel, we share the process with you all of what we do to these items and our vision and just getting these ready to resell. And we resell them here locally. We have a couple retail booths and a local antique mall. So in today's video, I am gonna call it a quick flip. These are items, these are some benches, some side tables, and they are quick flips. For Ginger Chick Rehab, they are quick flips. Usually when I'm thrifting an item, it is needy, it needs a lot of work. So to find random items that don't need much work, yes please. So in today's video, I'm gonna share the process with what we do and how we update, make over these items, and then get them ready to resell. And since cottage core seems to be hot right now or coming in, and I think it's kind of hand in hand with the farmhouse decor that I love to do. I'm in a rural area, we are still farmhouse, probably always will be farmhouse, so the white really fits in. So I'm going to share with you what my version of cottage core is. I love white, so that will definitely fit into my theme, into our booths. So I will share with you the process of these found items and what we did to get them ready to resell. So here's the first not so needed side table, and as you can see, somebody has already sanded it. I'm not sure if that was the look they were going for and that was their finished product, or they were in the middle of it and just didn't want to complete it. You can see there's a little bit of stainage, but I'm not too worried about that, especially at the $14.99 price. So now the next are these two benches. They are both sturdy. They just need a paint job for a little bit of updating. One was a thrift store find and one was a garage sale find. So this one, the thrift store find, was $8.09. It's a little bit on the short side, but you could still sit on it and take your shoes off. And then this one, oh my gosh, I don't even know why it was only $5 at a garage sale, but a great find for me. I thought these two matching end tables were a great find for $24 for the pair. Absolutely love these. I definitely think that they fit into that cottage core that's definitely coming around. And that beveled glass, oh my goodness, nice and heavy. Just so much detail that we're hoping that we'll be able to pop to update these. Now this is a rarity. There's no fixing needed. They just need to be cleaned. So we're going to use some Superclean and some hot water and get all these items wiped down. This is what's making it a quick flip for us anyway, is because there's no needed work. There's no clamping. There's no gluing. There's no Durham water putty, which is oddity for us to hit on thrifted items. So I wonder if this was just a new purchase good that somebody didn't like, or they just didn't really take that plastic tag off. I don't know. To help with making these a quick flip, we are going to be using a paint sprayer on these. So I want to be able, somebody spent all that time taking whatever finish was on this table off. I'm going to go ahead and protect it. So I have this thrifted contact paper that I've been using up for just these occasions. So I'm going to go ahead and just lay this on the top of it. And I know it's not going to cover all of it, but then I'll fill in with masking tape on the other areas. That way this top is good and protected. And I'm going to go ahead and remove this handle on this drawer. And then I'll go ahead and use some masking tape and some plastic and protect the inside and the outside of this drawer. We're just going to be spraying that little face, or maybe a staining. I'm not really sure right now, but I'm going to get it protected anyway. This is just a personal preference. I usually tape off my areas or contact paper at first before cleaning. That way if I have any water left on, it's not going to prevent the tape from sticking. And Of course, I'm going to let the piece dry before painting it, but for me, it's just an easier way to make sure that my paint or my tape and my contact paper is sticking very well. Well, that was easy enough. We just got them cleaned and now they're dry. And so Chris is using the Graco sprayer with the Kills paint and primer in one and the flat white. It's a paint that we are still able to get so far at our local Walmart. And he's using the Graco sprayer that the tube goes into the gallon of paint. So this is a perfect opportunity to get this. We're not doing anything fancy. We're not distressing any black areas. We're just, as I said, these are quick flips. I do think it was very nice of the person to have this all sanded just nice and so for us, just so we could pick it up and paint it. Okay, well, we could not help ourselves that this piece was already white. It has all this beautiful detail. I think maybe there's a primer, or it is a primer. So when we go to distress all that beautiful detail, it's not going to pop. So just taking a can of the Rustoleum paint and primer in the flat black. So when we go to paint over the white, that we'll be able to see all these beautiful details and make them pop a little bit. So on this bench, it's basically a brand new piece, so I'm not really sure. But to make it pop a little bit, we're going to leave that bottom, the brown. So Chris is just going to go and paint the top. But unfortunately, it's kind of an awkward trying to tape it off to do the sprayer, so he's just going to brush it on. Well, at least this way, getting these painted black first, you're going to actually be able to see the white covering it. Before, you'd just be seeing white over white. So just the white that we were looking for, I was unsure of what the paint really was that was underneath there, but everything should stick wonderfully. He did actually seal the black in with some clear coat, Rust-Oleum clear coat, to make sure that it stays on there when we're distressing it. Not that you need to see painting white over white over white over white. So 2 coats of white, flip the items, and give another 2 coats to what didn't get covered on the first round. So do you think the person bought this with the crack, or it got dropped and it got cracked? I'm not really sure, but I'm going through with just a sponge sander, just taking any of that. You get a little bit of texture from the sprayer, and then I'm going to go in and just distress some of those edges, just showing that wood, that was a dark wood that was underneath, just to give it that distressed look to blend it in with the bottom. So since you already can see the crack, painting something white definitely brings out details. And yep, unfortunately the crack is not a detail that I really want people to focus on. So why not off-center some grain sack stripes? Yep, I'm sure you all who are regular to our channel, knew exactly what I was going to do with that crack. So nothing says that it has to be perfectly in the middle. We're trying to cover up the crack. We're not going to take it away. I could have filled it in, but these are supposed to be quick flips. So what we're doing here is just that first piece of tape. I put it right over the crack, and now I'm laying a piece of tape on either side, and then I'll pull that middle tape up because that's where my first painting stripe will go. So why don't we do a little bit of a cottage core and not do my faithful black? So I'm going to do elephant. So why not? I think that gray is a nice soft color. This is a little bit darker of a gray. That way it will blend in the crack, which it's that perfectly perfect. I've seen Hobby Lobby stuff. They have cracks on it and people are still buying it. So I think this is definitely, it's not structural by any means. So I'm just using the Waverly chalk paint and elephant and a makeup sponge from the Dollar Tree store. And then I'm just doing that dry dab technique where you put a little bit of paint on the sponge and take a lot of the paint off, so that way you're not squishing it underneath your tape. It's actually a warm enough day out that when I went through with the first coat, it was already dry by the time I started my second coat, so I just worked my way back down, and I'm just going to go ahead and just do the 2 coats and making sure that it is covered. Now to make sure that it is good and dry, I'm just going to heat up that tape using the blow dryer, that I'm not going to accidentally have a wet spot that touches my white paint. And then I'm going to go ahead and remove the tape. Well, and just to go in with that crack and that perfectly imperfect, you can see that when I pulled the tape off, some of the paint came with it. I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm just going to proceed on putting my 2-inch piece of Dollar General tape over that, centering it over the paint stripe. That way I have an even edge on each side of what is going to be unpainted. And then I'm going to just guesstimate how much of width of the next stripe I want to be. Of course, I'm going to kind of go with what the tape pulled up where that little missing piece is. So that's how I'm gauging how wide it's going to be. Just use your resources, use what you have. So yep, I'm just going through and laying a piece of tape on either side. So the empty space with no tape is where the next paint stripe will go. So now I'm just going to take my sanding sponge and go ahead and distress those edges a little bit more. Just kind of blending in where some of that paint had pulled off, just seeing if I can get it to blend in and just look like a little bit more of a distressed look. Now that Kills paint is on there really good, so that sanding sponge just was not enough. So I'm just going to take the little Black+Decker mouse sander and I'm going to lightly put it on just enough to make a little bit more distress on those edges, you know, where you would be pushing it down really hard to really take paint off. I'm just lightly holding it. So my vision for this bench is just white. No words, no details. It's not a huge bench. It's not a terribly small bench, but I can just see putting a little pillow on there, a little nice little basket, just something to sit on or something to put decor on. So I'm not going to fill it up with a lot of grain sack or wording or anything like that. So I'm just going in with that same little mouse center. I'm going to give it a little bit more of a distressing using this mouse sander with some 220 sandpaper and just letting it touch those edges. I really want the edges to show through. We did not paint these pieces black, so I really want that wood that was underneath that was dark enough for it to show through. So then I thought I had this great idea just in case those edges were going to chip, but I think it really was just the paint and the time spent, that it wasn't completely cured yet, of course, when I put the tape on it. But I had the idea to seal in my edges using Rustoleum clear coat and matte. But as I was watching that dry, I'm like, oh, really? This is supposed to be a quick flip. But unfortunately, it pulled some of that stain through that white and caused it to be this not very so pretty color. So now I got to go in with some couple coats of shellac and seal that in and touch up paint those areas. Now when I thrifted this pair of side tables with that glass on there, and then it had this square in the bottom, I definitely could see some type of a stencil or a transfer. So when I was searching on the interweb, on my Amazon, I'm like, oh, look at these are perfect. They go right in a corner. So to kind of keep with that cottage core, I can't envision black, so I'm still sticking with my gray theme here. So I'm using the Timeless Gray multi-use apple barrel paint, and I'm using this little sponge applicator that you can get in your paint sections. It's just the way that you dab. I'm going to be dabbing on this, and I only want it to do one coat coverage because it's a stencil, and I'm on the fence about tacky spray of adhering stencils down. I've had some bad luck with it leaving sticky residue behind, so I'm just going to put some of that paint on this little dabber sponge and then take a lot of it off, and then just making sure that I'm getting it the most coverage I can with the one coat. Now I'm going to be flipping that and going into the other opposite corner. So I want to make sure that that stencil is going to be touching this previous stencil. So I want to make sure that this is going to dry. So I'm just using the assistance of the blow dryer to make sure that it is dry. So before I put that stencil back down, I just covered it up with just a paper towel because that paint is not cured. It's not sealed in. It may be dry, but I don't want the chance of the stencil moving it, rubbing it off. So I did clean up the stencil as much as I can so I didn't have any wet paint when I'm using it again and then just doing that same dry technique, trying to make sure that I am nice and covered, trying to make sure that my stencil's not shifting. This stencil is nice and thick, I will say, so I don't feel like, especially, and there's a little bit of a lip of that corner that's keeping this in place very nice for me. The seal in this little bench is, it's got Kills Paint Primer, so this is just an extra step, just a level of protection, especially when we're painting a light color like white. So I'm just going in with some Varathane finishing wax and I'm wiping on, and then I'll wipe off any excess and then let it dry. Yay for shellac, that works for getting rid of bleed through. I did put a couple coats by just brushing them on in those corners that had the bleed through, and now after it's dry, I'm just taking a sanding sponge and making sure that it's nice and smooth. Then after brushing off the dust, I'll go ahead and give it a nice coat of the Varathane finishing wax also, just one more level of protection. So now to finish up that completely sanded down end table. So when it comes to sanding this piece, it's a light stain or light wood underneath, so we're not distressing this piece. So all I'm doing is taking the sponge sanding pad and just sanding it smooth, getting rid of the texture that was left behind from the sprayer. So nope, no distressing on this piece. And then before removing that contact paper, that tape that's protecting that top, I'm going to go ahead and get it waxed with Varathane finishing wax, just like all the other ones that's just our go-to for finishing up, especially when we've used the Kills paint and primer in one. Now we can get that protective layer of contact paper and masking tape removed to see what we need to deal with this top and those stains. I can't even tell you. I think that these are just watermarks left behind, maybe. That one's got a little bit of staining going on, but I think it's an easy fix. I think the Clorox bleach will just remove these off this raw wood. So after putting some gloves on to protect my hands, I'm just taking a piece of drop cloth, any piece of a rag, and I'm just, yep, that's it, straight out of the bottle, wiping it on. No dilution at all. So I'm just going to go ahead and let that first layer soak into that wood and see what it does, and if it's not enough off yet, then I can add some more. So as you see, that one on that one side is a little bit, I think it had a little bit of stain, maybe the stain that was left over. But I think once I start rinsing this off, I think I should be good to go, just reactivating that bleach that has dried. So I'm just taking a bucket of hot water and I'm gonna rinse it multiple times to make sure I get that bleach off. So sticking with that light and airy stain kind of technique, so I'm going with this Aged Gray by Rustoleum in the chalk paint, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make that watered down stain, which is 30% paint and 70% water, and mix up just like a whitewash type of stain, but this one's going to have a little bit of gray hue to it just to complement this raw side table. So sometimes you just have to appreciate the beauty of the grain, just this grain in this piece. I definitely didn't want anything dark covering it up. I definitely wanted to stick with that cottage core. The bleach worked, it got those stains away. Yep, another little thing in your arsenal of flipping is just Clorox bleach. Who would have thought? So all I'm going to be doing now is the wood is dry, and I'm just going to take a piece of drop cloth, a piece of cloth, and just wipe it on. So that's the first thing I'm going to do, is wipe it on. This is the first time I've ever done this technique, so here we are, guys. I am trying to make sure that I'm getting it evenly applied, which seems like I'm doing so, and then after a few minutes I'm going to go back with a drier cloth and go ahead and wipe off any excess that's just kind of laying on the top. So I was kind of waiting to do the drawer front. I just really wanted to see what the difference of this is. I think I'm going to add one more coat just to get it to richen up in that gray just a little bit more. Then after getting off the excess, I'll just walk away and let it dry. So I know I need to seal this top in, but I used chalk paint for my stain. So just to be on the safe side that I'm not pulling it off by using a top coat that I'm going to have to brush on the first coat, I'm going to go ahead and just give it a spray of the polyacrylic first. Oh, I just am absolutely loving how the stain turned out. So now that I know that I'm not going to pull that stain off because I did that spray, I'm going to go ahead and put a couple more coats of the polyacrylic on using a brush. And as I'm applying that polyacrylic with a brush, I'm making sure that I go the direction of the grain. I'm making sure that I don't have too much on my brush, that I'm getting bubbles, and that I'm pulling too much that it's running over on those edges. While I have this polyacrylic spray out, I'm going to go ahead and give a nice misting over the stencil. That multi-use apple barrel needs to be sealed in also, so I'm just going to seal this in. I don't need to spray my entire piece, I just want to spray where those stencils were put. Now that polyacrylic is dry, we can go in and start distressing these pieces. Yeah, so for these being a quick flip, okay, what makes it a quick flip for Ginger Chick Rehab is that we didn't have to glue them and fix them and clamp them. But yep, now we have all this distressing, and there's so much details on these little side tables that, yep, that's why we spent the time painting that black and sealing that in so we could distress the edges. So yep, now we're taking some 220 sandpaper on all those sharp edges and showing some of that black. Yep, and if you guessed it, yep, we blow these off with the air compressor because we created a lot of sanding dust, and then finishing off with some Varathane finishing wax to give it that nice extra protection. So because of all the detail, Chris is going to go in with one of the waxing brushes, wax it on, and then take a dry cloth to wax off any of the excess. And then, yep, now I'm going to go in, now this polyacrylic is dry, and I'm going to make sure that it's sanded nice and smooth. But I have to say, I am blessed that this was already sanded all the way down to that rawness. Oh my gosh, and I just absolutely love this wash, this gray wash that we used on the top of it. It just definitely left that graining just showing. And yep, this is going to get a finishing coat of this Varathane Finish Wax. Did you guys know how much we love this stuff? And we can only buy it at the Home Depot. So as I'm getting ready to stage these items all for you to see, I need to clean this glass, and I just absolutely love it. It's a nice, heavy, thick, beveled glass, and my go-to for cleaning glass is always the Norwex cloth, and I will hopefully try to remember to link them if you are not a fan of these. Oh my gosh, I've used these for decades. So it has an Enviro cloth that you get wet and clean it with, and then a glass cleaning cloth that leaves it streak-free. So what did you think of my Cottage Core quick flip makeovers? Yeah, you always think they're going to be a quick flip fix, but you can't just throw paint on it and slap it in your booth. It needs a little bit of detail. Something's always a little bit needy. I didn't expect some bleed through on that one. Hey, it is what it is. Hiding the crack with a green stripe. Why not? People, Hobby Lobby sells cracked and chippy things all the time. So it definitely fits into that farmhouse, that cottage core, you know, lake houses, what have you, just that old classic style. So I hope I have inspired you to look at thrift store finds in a new way. I hope that I've kind of hit on the cottage core. I know, probably still kind of hand in hand with my farmhouse style that I definitely love. So thank you for watching today's video, guys. And if you are part of our YouTube family, thank you so much. Just your kind words and your kind compliments and always watching our videos just means a lot. It is so heartwarming. And if you are checking out our content for the first time and you enjoyed it, please hit that subscription button along with the notification bell so you know when we've uploaded a new video. And we'll see you next time, guys. Bye.